resulted, I found a newspaper article that I can't locate again, from the 1880s, I think, saying that the Chinese cemetery caught fire and burned north all the way through the Oddfellows Cemetery, which is in the far corner, not the southwest corner, but the southeast corner, where you'll see kind of an open field area. It had been for years. So there was a fire there, started in the Chinese burials. It burned all the way through the Oddfellows Cemetery, which is on the far east side of the cemetery, all the way to 2nd Street, through the Masonic Cemetery. So the Chinese had a tradition of trying to rebury after a period when they had funds and so forth to disinter their dead, put them in a copper box, I think, and ship them to China for final burial. So probably a lot of folks in that original burial ground were shipped off, but just like McCool and others, probably not all. And yet the cemetery has no record of that, nor do they have a record. Remember we talked about the McCool burials, these bones that were found. Also there were some other indigent people. Here in this vacant lot here across from the Catholic cemetery is where they were put. And I'm hoping to get some archaeologists out to do ground penetrating radar and seeing what we can find there. The cemetery again has no record to speak of any burials there.
Wow.
So here is the 10-acre original Catholic portion, now all part of the city's ownership. In the middle of it, there's a priest circle. You'll see one or two of the priests from McCool, who were originally buried there, moved there. You'll see some of the burials from McCool there in the oldest section, which is just past the priest circle from the early 1900s.
So Dan,
yeah.
Come on. I'm going to get our truck. There's a couple people who are flagging a little bit, so there's probably room for 4 people. If you want to be picked up now, raise your hand. Nobody? Okay.
I think they all already went back there. I think they're already walking back.
Right. Yeah, I'm going here.
So we're going to pick up the pace a little more here.
I remember, I came on the way.
This area here, you'll see these are all children, infants. And this section is called Babyland.
Well, we actually have a real Babyland section that was designated for burials today up in the flats there, west.
I didn't know
But there are little areas in all sections. Like there's a Catholic one right up here where you'll see where they buried the infants. The plots are smaller. And we don't do any burials there now unless it's a family-owned plot. But that other area is specifically designated today sadly, for someone that has to bury an infant or a child. A lot of them must have been a fire. I don't know. Yeah, no, because I have the records here and nothing would be safe for the office. So long. Yeah. I just had to go through old newspaper about property and stuff on my own and then learn like this and more. Joanne's the one that said for weapons I wasn't told that put all that buried over there. And it said that his grandma was an Indian, and then he was married to
Yeah.
statue downtown, or on
Oh.
but there's a lot of things about that. He was supposedly supposed to be surrendering yellow burgers.
I don't know where that is either.
She kind of said they're up in
We're in this area. We're in
area
this area.
somewhere,
I don't know if it's on that side or.
The most unique one is over by where we started. That's my favorite. That was established in middle 1800s. And there's 6 barrels inside. Is this like an Italian area or something? Well, there is a lot of Italians in this. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. There's a lot of it is Italians and
Runaway dog.
So here we have the Oddfellows Cemetery. All this area here up to the Catholic Cemetery or the old Chinese cemetery is the Oddfellows. Here you have the back of Robert Wolf. Robert Wolf was Walla Walla's first paid fireman, hired originally as a driver. Later on became assistant chief, died in a fire in 1912. I think, Susan, I think that Josephine Wolf probably paid for that as well, or not. No, she was gone by then, wasn't she?
She left a lot of money to the firemen, and so how they appropriated it.
thought that was her son. It's not Wolf spelled different. It's
By the way, here's Josephine Wolf's own monument over here. This very large one
with the
with
cross,
a cross
on it.
on top, and one of Joanna's green signs in front of it.
So a time when she died at 73, she was very wealthy. She died, everything about her destroyed. Photographs. If there was an obituary, I guess, in a Yakima newspaper, she's a very private person.
Except her parrot. She willed her parrot to a
Oh, I
friend.
didn't hear. Okay, that's good. That's a good.
And actually her jewelry and her clothing, but she said if her clothing did not get used by that person, it was to be destroyed.
Jeez.
I've studied her probate file on at the courthouse. She died owing some insurance to E.B. Whitman, although he had already died.
I bet she was an interesting person. My great cousin is supposed to be Darby from Pendleton. She's the madam.
Much myth associated with her, I must say. Very little undocumented information. This is the Kirkman plot.
Take it away.
Okay. William Kirkman came here actually he and Isabella Potts Kirkman in 1871. He was a big cattleman and a big rancher. We're talking about 2 immigrants, he from England, Isabella from Ireland. He died in 1893, coming home from a European trip. He was in Oshkosh, Wisconsin on the train, and he died. They had the funeral in the parlor and buried him here. Around are all the Kirkman children, including the 6 that they lost before the age of 5.
Oh, jeez.
And the 4 that lived to grow up. And a whole bunch of spouses, couple grandchildren, not too many. They weren't terribly prolific. But this whole thing is the Kirkman plot. And right down here, apparently where one can no longer read it, it says to live in the hearts. Oh no, there it is right there. To live in the hearts we leave behind is not to die. That's what I always end my talk with at Kirkman House Museum. I say it's my job to keep their story alive. Because I think they are everything wonderful about Walla Walla. Immigrants come here, work hard, make good, give back, change the community.
And
That's the
these
Kirkmans.
are all primarily cremations also.
Oh,
Something
wow.
was kind of fun this spring. We had owl babies in here. And one rainy day, there was two siblings and they were different sizes, but they both ended up at the base of the monument. And if you notice the feet of that urn
I
up
was
there,
just going to say, well, they
Yeah,
picked,
so I
picked
got
it because of
pictures
the
of
tail
that.
on.
Adorable.
Yeah.
Please share that with
Yeah.
me. Okie doke.
they're so
That's
cute.
really a cool story.
Pictures?
Yeah, I have pictures. I don't have my phone with me, but yeah, I got lots of pictures of them.
Yeah, that would be
I
great.
follow them all.
Great to see a picture on location.
And they both have a few on there.
So what happened to him in Walla Walla? I mean in Oshkosh?
You know, he just died on the train.
My wife's from
So down this road was the formal entrance to the Oddfellows Cemetery. There was a large gate and an arch over it. There was a caretaker's house and caretaking building there. I grew up on Abbott Road just down the street. This is my neighborhood park, so I have all kinds of dream images of the cemetery as well. But anyway, this is the Oddfellows. Next is the Masons.
You want to point out at Woodland of the world there?
Oh yes. Joanna, you want to talk about the Woodland of the world?
So this is an interesting organization. There's a really good representation of a monument. My favorite is over by the Baker Circle, but this gives you some idea too. So they were listed in directories as a secret and benevolent society. They were formed in Omaha, Nebraska in 1890, and they were kind of a life insurance company for rural families, because if their breadwinner died at that time, they just had little resources, and it would give them a source of income. So they recruited rural men and prioritized hard work and selflessness. So they're throughout the cemetery, different sizes. You'll see some of them are smaller, but they all depict a tree trunk, and you can see the bark. But if you go up close to them, there's a lot of intricate detail about life as a forester or a logger in general. Then there's fig leaves, but it pretty much depicts woodworking or some of the work in the wood. No, it's a different. It's called the Woodsman of the World, and now these stones qualify as folk art, and they mostly
Right? That would be the look.
and back east.
Kids just don't know how to keep things nice anymore. So many stones destroyed and stuff anymore. It makes me sad. Jane Addams.
This Adams obelisk he was a great big livestock producer. Probably started with sheep and then went to horses in Umatilla County. And he came here in 1858 with just nothing, and then he taught school for 4 years and earned enough, got some money to start, and then became a very successful rancher. So it shows you how you could make a fortune with just hard work and being resourceful. If any of you that took my little handout about the tombstone cleaning want to see how well it works, the back of the sign right there, that's Colonel McCarthy, who was actually also one of two Medal of Honor recipients.
gonna wonder if you're gonna talk about it.
Here's a very famous grave because his finger is pointing not up to heaven but the other direction.
So this probably is one of the most visited and most controversial in the cemetery. Originally it wasn't on the
Here
first
she is right there.
publication because it was thought to be witches. And it really isn't. It's really a sorrowful tale of their child's death. And then later Lydia is actually buried right there they were not living together upon his death, and she remarried and is buried there. And he was actually the cemetery sexton, which is that's a caretaker, from 1890 to 1907. And there was a 25 difference in their ages, which maybe was part of the reason they didn't stay together. He was born in New York. She was a Walla resident. So these were installed prior to their deaths. And so according to his grandson, he was an odd man with a whimsical sense of humor. So they put the dates on there. They're probably going to put 19 and 10 or 19 and 26, but because they weren't together, she probably just said, heck with that. And she went down there. So those markers, the way they have the hands down, that's actually God's pulling them up. So that it had a negative connotation, probably because of the way the concrete. I don't know why the stones were placed that way. We have some other odd ones. So people were saying the concrete was there so they couldn't get out. So I think the myth is fabricated. People, you love story like that. So those little blank rectangles above, so they were supposed to read, this was according to the grandson, his would say, here I am, how do you do? And hers would say, I am dead, so are you.
Oh, that's awesome.
You can see X in there, we don't know if that means, after death or am dead, we don't know. But this was actually, the piece behind, the stone behind was stolen in 1988, and they found it at Milford Cemetery. But it's fascinating. People go all the time. I guess it doesn't hurt to have something fun like that to think about. And we have some others like that are covered different ways or just the markers are placed different.
So here we have the cemetery's most famous outlaw, Paterson. As I recall, he killed a ship's officer in Portland. He came here. Joanna's sign said most wanted outlaws of the Northwest during the 1860s. A gambler. He killed 2 men in cold blood and scalped a woman.
Wow.
He was ultimately killed by a lawman while getting a shave, at Richard Bogle's barbershop in Walla. Richard Bogle, how many have heard him? He's a wonderful character. We have him in the Living History Company. He was a African-American.
Jamaican?
He actually was a Jamaican. He stowed away on a ship to New York, as I recall, as a youth. Came out to Oregon. He married America, Waldo, whose mother was a slave of Henry Waldo, a rather famous settler one of the first in Willamette Valley, who then freed her and I think America. He was a very successful barber. He also was a banker. He was on the board of one of the savings and loans. He was a farmer and had his out to stay in Walla Walla hotels or eat in restaurants, and so they often spent the night in his shop. And his grave is right back here. We haven't quite figured out which one it is today.
We found it the other day, and then it's eluding us today.
So we're going to have one of Joanna's markers, I'm sure, in the future.
You betcha. And Richard's sons became barbers too. His barber shop was on 2nd Street in the Payne building, and when he died, he was so well thought of that all those doctors and lawyers, all of course white, in the Payne building were all his pallbearers.
Oh, wow.
Susan?
Yep.
Is Garfield his son?
Garfield Bogle? It's a funny place.
His great-grandson is a sportscaster on television in Portland, as I recall. He came here one time, and our Richard Bull didn't show up, and so he portrayed his great-grandfather.
Aw,
That's right.
that's awesome. Did he look like him?
I don't know, it was before my time.
Oh, darn it.
Not before I was born.
Well, I know, before you were here.
You know what the buildings, they look like they may have been old military. He's right by Elsie's, and we Elsie's are last night.
So this concludes our tour of Mountain View. Let's board the bus, and we have 2 more cemeteries to visit. Stubblefield and
Yeah, there's like a little
Lyons Creek, or otherwise known as Hendricks, otherwise known as Mill Creek, where William Davies is buried, who announced that his son was the reincarnation of Jesus Christ.
Me too. Oh,